Joining me now, Banyan Hill Senior Research Analyst, former hedge fund manager, Ian King. Ian, good to have you with us. Also with us tonight, Rebecca Walser, President and CEO of Walser Wealth Management, author of the best-selling book, Wealth Unbroken, Growing Wealth Uninterrupted by Market Crashes, Taxes, and Even Death. That sounds like it's bulletproof. Good to have you with us, Rebecca. Let me start with the incipient point without question, and that is Apple cutting back its guidance and basically saying its guidance had been torn to shreds and blaming China. Rebecca, your thoughts?
You know, I don't think it's too surprising, Lou, because in September we saw a lot of their supply chain cut their share prices because of orders being pulled back. And we also saw in November Apple saying that they would no longer report sales by unit, which was kind of very odd for the market and kind of a tell that something is amiss or going awry. And so I sort of expected that Apple was going to sort of revise their first quarter. This is their first quarter ending projections downward, but we didn't expect it to be so big, $9 billion revenue down. Blaming China, yes.
And Ian, your reaction? Do you think the market's overreacting here or catching up with a new reality?
I think a lot of Apple's problems are endemic to the company itself. I mean, look, Apple is trying to sell $1,000 cell phones to China and India, and these are places of the world where they don't want to pay $1,000 for cell phones. And Apple,
well, they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay for $1,000 for i10s in this country either. I mean, what we've seen demonstrated is not just in India or China. We see for the first time Apple doesn't have pricing power like it once did, right?
That's right.
Correct. And additionally, the cell phone replacement cycle, which used to be about every 2 years, is now lengthened to every 3 years. So if you got an iPhone 8, that's great. You don't need a new iPhone 10. You don't need the new iPhone XS. You're totally comfortable with what you have. But I also think the big point really in India, smartphone penetration is only at 19%. In China, it's 59%. And these are the big growth markets for smartphone makers right now. And if you don't have a phone that is priced appropriately for the market, you're not going to sell smartphones.
Let me tell you what I think everybody is missing, at least in this country. And that is, we're talking about China. And China dictates outcomes. This is one of the outcomes that they are dictating. It is not an accident to see their sales slow as they did. You know, this isn't simply Tim Cook catching up with an old reality. This is a new reality, and it's clearly driven by the communist leadership of China, without question. Now to the market itself. Rebecca, this is a market that is, some are saying without question, it's just overdone. This sell-off is just beyond reason. I don't see that at all. I don't see why it stayed up in the face of these interest rate hikes. I don't see why it stayed up in the face of this runoff by the Fed of its balance sheet. I mean, they're sucking money out of the economy and making credit even more expensive.
It's true, Lou, but the reason is we still do have a lot of strong economic fundamentals. So I agree with you. I think we're in for a bumpy ride. I do think we're in correction territory and headed towards it. But if you look at the unemployment, the labor market, some of the tightest labor market we've seen in years, 50 years for the unemployment rate. Strong wage growth last year was really important. And the GDP, obviously, certainly better under President Trump's deregulatory and tax policies than it was under sluggish Obama years. But I just want to touch on China 1 second. You know, with this situation, we got to hurry.
Real quickly, please, Rebecca.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with Huawei, you know, China has pushed its employees to go the Huawei route instead of the Apple route, and some of that Apple could be as a result of that.
Yeah, okay, that's a view. And Ian, you get the last word here.
I mean, I would agree with what Rebecca said. There's a dislocation right now between the stock market and the real economy. We have stock market corrections. We've had them in the past before. Over the long run, the market goes up. There's going to be some volatility earlier in this year, but when we clean up the trade truce with China and we clean up what the Fed is doing, I think the market's going to continue its rally that it has had for the last decade.
All right. Thank you very much. Ian King, Rebecca Walser, thank you both for being here. Up next,